we're moving on to the last presentation of this little session here, and it's going to be my good friend Rob McLeod, CEO of Blackwolf Copper and Gold. Looking forward to what you're up to in Alaska and the area around Stewart.
All right. Thank you so much, Kai, and thank you everybody for attending my presentation today. Really grateful for everybody being here. So this is my second show here in Frankfurt for the year, so it's great to see many of you again. There's many reasons why you should take a look at Blackwolf as a potential investment. First of all, our value is underpinned by a substantial polymetallic volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit called Niblack. It's got an excellent location in southeast Alaska. There's almost 9 million tons combined currently. Most of the resources are in the indicated status. And additionally, this is actually going to change within the next couple of weeks because we are updating the resource based on multiple rounds of drilling, including in some new areas. So one of our upcoming catalysts is going to be a new number at Niblack. Share structure, as you know, is so important. We have excellent shareholders, really good institutional holders. Management has big skin in the game, and we're very cheap at a 12 million market cap. We just had a financing come free trading, so we've been a little bit whacked over the past month, so it might be a really good time to get a position. Management, toot our own horn here. We have two projects. In addition to Niblack, we have greenfields gold-silver properties in the Golden Triangle, but on the Alaska side of the border. That is my turf. That's where I grew up. 3 generations of our family has been building mines, doing exploration, making discoveries, and I believe we're going to make the next big gold-silver discovery at our Cantu project. This is a property I presented back in the spring here, and we were hoping to drill it during the summer. We didn't receive our permits in time to have a drill program this year. It broke my heart for this season, but the gold isn't going anywhere. It's the best looking drill target I have seen in my career. So certainly have it on your radar for in the coming spring. And then finally, what is the exit for this company? We have a path that we believe would work for Niblack, looking at potentially partnering with other mining companies in a hub and spoke mine and mill arrangement in southeast Alaska and northwest BC. So if you haven't been on the ground in this property, and there's only 2 of us that have, my colleague Jody Gibson, who's our VP Exploration, sitting in the back, this is a spectacular looking vein target. Joanna, at your keynote opening presentation this morning, you mentioned the dearth of new discoveries. You know, it's really hard in exploration. Most new discoveries are blind, they're geochemical anomalies, they're often geophysical anomalies. It's really, really rare to see veins of this tenor. These are 30-meter wide quartz veins that run between, say, 8 and 30 grams per ton gold with very high silver numbers. This has never been drilled before, and it's located adjacent to a mine in the Golden Triangle that is going into production, a famous historical mine called Premier. Okay, let's start with our share structure. We have 39.6 million shares outstanding, 50.8 fully diluted. Our 2 major institutional shareholders are Delbrook Capital, the largest money manager out of Vancouver, and actually last year was the most successful gold fund worldwide. And Crescat Capital own a little over 10% at 11.8%, and lots of other great institutions as well. And as mentioned, management and close advisors have 17.6%, so lots of skin in the game. Here's our project locations. In southeast Alaska, on the Alaska Panhandle, the Niblack project's right at the south end of a very large island called Prince Wales Island with significant historic mining. And then our Hyder properties are located just right next to the Canadian border in the Golden Triangle. So getting back to Joanna's keynote at the start, you know, how do discoveries start? And as mentioned, I'm a geologist by trade, and I grew up in a small mining town called Stewart, BC. And my dad was an underground miner. He was also a quite astute mining historian and had collected a lot of old memorabilia and photographs from historic prospecting. And I found, there's a magazine there. It says Alaska Sportsman, and it's about these crazy old-timers. I'm just going to go forward a slide here. That they found that Golden Triangle is known for really, really high-grade gold and silver. Like the historic Premier Mine used to be the richest in North America for almost 20 years. Brucejack is the modern equivalent with spectacular gold. These old-timers found the seams of ELECTRUM in glacial float sitting right next to a glacier at the top of a mountain. So where is the gold coming from? It's coming from under the ice. So what did they do? They started tunneling through the ice. And after several years, they would, usually work for a few months during the year, and then they'd go work at other mines, make some money, and then they'd come back on their own prospect. And eventually in 1938, these guys found this little vein, and it's a remarkable story. You can read it on our website. They found a vein just loaded with gold. They pulled 330 ounces of gold from about 200 kilos worth of quartz. And then they got the hell out of there, right? That miner, he ended up, he died in an accident underground, and my uncle pulled his body out. My uncle was a pretty famous mining promoter. His two kids are Catherine and Bruce as well. But that story got lost. And so when we staked the ground last year, we knew that the ice would be melted and we could maybe find those veins. But for those of you that are worried about the imminent global warming, the snow hasn't melted off of this area in the past 2 summers, so we haven't been able to see those veins exposed. But it got us into the area. We staked 5 claims. Now, the Golden Triangle is one of the most active places in the world for exploration, for mergers and acquisitions. The Pretium acquisition by Newcrest was $3.4 billion for the Brucejack mine, part of the family roots. Brucejack is named after my cousin, the CEO of Sabina Resources, Bruce, and my grandfather, Jack McLeod. My uncle used to have that property, and to quote him, the geologists back in the 1980s were drilling the wrong freaking way. And so it just shows what can be found if you're persistent in this part of the world. So the prospect with the big veins is called Cantu. It's located adjacent to Ascot's Resources Premier Gold Project, which is a historic mine and is currently in redevelopment and is very likely part of the same system. It is literally on the Canada-Alaska border. That's outlined in the dashed line. There's significant alluvial gold. It's a rugged coastal rainforest and some very steep cliffs. And I used to work at that mine that's currently in redevelopment. It used to be in production in the early 1990s, and I worked there as a student as a mill operator. And I drove past this property 100 times, and I had no idea that these veins were exposed here. It wasn't until old-timer gave me an old map that mentioned, hey, there's a 30-meter wide quartz vein in the cliff. And I was like, yeah, you could promote just like I'm promoting to you right now back in the 1920s and 30s. So we flew over in a helicopter, and there it was. I was like, we're drilling that thing. And unfortunately, it's taken us a year to get the permits. But again, the gold isn't going anywhere. Here's some of the values. We have assays pending from this target. Last year, 30 grams per ton gold, over almost 3,000 grams per ton silver, a lot of copper. It's in a mineral called polybasite, which if you go to the Brucejack mine or to Premier, you will see that unique mineral that is indicative of very, very high-grade vein systems. But Jody and his team, they found more. There's multiple stacked structures here, basically from the top of this mountain and right and down to the valley bottom. We have assays pending from surface work that we should have out. This is going to be an upcoming catalyst from the past couple of weeks, not only here but throughout our 5 properties in the Golden Triangle. So what are we going to do? Where it says drill sites, we're going to do an archaeological assessment first thing in the spring. And then in April or May, we will be putting what will be hopefully the first holes to target this remarkable vein. So this is what I live for as an explorationist. These are really, really rare to see because, you know, most, especially in prolific mining trends, most of the ground has been covered by previous prospectors and geologists. It looks like it's flat-lying, very similar to the structures at the Premier mine, so very likely part of the same system. Okay, I'm going to switch gears to our overall strategy, and this is going to tie in. It's one of the reasons why Crescat's a big shareholder, and I'm going to talk about our Niblack project because we have lots of news coming out on this one. So, you know, what could be a trend that we should see in mining? It should be maybe more companies working together. So we're in some discussions and expect some news out. It'll just be MOU type news, but working with other companies to say, hey, if you're on either road network or on ocean, could we combine forces on one mill, one central processing site, and one tailing site? And since Niblack has an excellent location on tidewater, but doesn't have any power or roads, can we find a site that will work? And there's a site we've identified in Canada that already has its permits and has all the infrastructure in place that would work. So stay tuned for some news on that. So what is Niblack? It's a volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit. It has had substantial historic work, almost 500 drill holes. There's a full-size production ramp. What's new? What did we do different? Well, we take credit for it, but it was actually a master's student that found that this folded VMS system was in fact upside down. It was overturned. And so this was a different interpretation than what previous explorers came up with, and it led to some exploration success I'll show you shortly. Just again, in terms of resource, this is a beautiful ore body. It's up to 150 meters wide, so it's amenable to bulk underground mining techniques, almost 2 grams per ton gold and 1% copper with silver and zinc. But again, this resource is going to be stale dated within the next couple of weeks. Some of the drill holes that we've been pulling off, multiple deposits throughout the area, which is typical of VMS systems. The best global analog is the Bisha deposit, formerly owned by Nevsun. Very similar geochemistry, and even though it's on the other side of the planet, but it's very, very similar in terms of its geological setting. We have high-grade exhalative style mineralization, up to 10% copper equivalent over substantial widths. Our lookout zone is a bit different. It's volcanic replacement style mineralization, where we'll get 20 to 100 meter thick intervals of 1 to 3% copper type values with equivalent gold, silver, and zinc, with different types of zonation. This is an example of where we came up with our new geological interp. This was, and again, Kai, next time laser pointer, bud, is we thought it was an aniform, so like an upside down U. We drilled it and we found out, in fact, it is a synform. So full credit to the young geoscientist who's currently at UBC in Vancouver. So VMS deposits, they typically occur as a whole series of deposits along one prospective horizon. The nearest large mine is called Greens Creek. It's one of Hecla's flagship operations. They started with 3 million tons. They're up to about 30 million tons. Mara Falls on Vancouver Island's up to 50 million tons. Typically, you keep finding more and more deposits as you drill long strikes. So we have a lot of different targets to look at, including quite an interesting one called Dama. I'm not advancing, sir. Nope.
Shaking and hitting it helps. No?
Can you advance the slide?
Könnt ihr hinten die nächste Folie machen? Der Klicker hat den Geist aufgegeben.
It means the discovery is there.
Yeah, we don't need to say anymore. Thank you, Claude. You should be the CEO of this show.
There you go.
Thank you. So here's an example. These intercepts here, these are all where it is open for expansion. So you can see in between the different deposits is where we'd like to close, but along strike and down dip, we've drilled as far as we can from underground, but like 77 meters of a gram gold and almost % copper, for example, wide open long strike, 44 meters of 2.8 grams, 2% copper, wide open down dip. So what does this project need? Lots of drilling. We're not going to dilute our 40 million shares at these type of levels to raise the $10 million that what this project really, really needs. When we got a hot market, when we are in a position where we can capitalize ourselves better, that's when we're going to hit this one hard. Okay, there we go. Again, this is an example, open up and down dip. These are, and you know, this is typically how incrementally you grow these VMS deposits. Once you get on them, they're very, very consistent. So here, this is another rarity to find in exploration, and I actually remember when this was discovered by my old boss, Garfield McVeigh, who poured a bottle of scotch down the discovery hole. 19 meters, and he didn't filter it through his kidneys first. So 19 meters of 6% copper, and then this was Lac Minerals. They were bought by Barrick Gold back in the early 1990s, and then the project was idled. And then it was prohibited to cut trees in this area of Alaska by the Clinton administration. It was called the roadless rule in this national forest. And the Trump administration repealed it in 2020. So we'll finally be able to follow up from this remarkable intercept. So why should you look at Blackwolf? Well, again, value underpinned by Niblack, lots of exploration upside. But really, to be part of this potential new discovery at Cantu, I hope you can feel my enthusiasm for it, because it's really rare to see these in exploration, something new where you can put the first hole into a brand new discovery in a prolific belt. So thank you very much, Kai, and I'm here. I got lots of extra time this afternoon as well, too, if any of you have further questions or want to talk more. But thank you.
Allow me one last question before we break for the coffee break, but permitting the Cantu project. You're in Alaska, US, and Stewart, Canada. How does that work?
So on the Alaska side, there's different types of lands in the United States. Some are owned by the state, some are owned by the federal government. We're on federal lands, so they're administered by the Department of Interior, and it is very bureaucratic. It's not anti-mining, it's just process, it's time. And so what took us a while is now anything that's older than 50 years old, which is older than me, I've just turned 51. And if somebody's old garbage from the 1960s, you can't disturb it. That is now considered a heritage site. So in these old mining districts, you have to do an archaeological assessment, and usually it's the government that does it. And they tried all summer to get some archaeologists out to go and do a proper survey of the area, and they never made it. You know, we thought we'd have our permits in June, but we didn't receive them until the end of September. So it's I'm just at the acceptance phase. And but it's certainly not anti-mining, but it is something to consider for any investments that you might look at in the United States on federal lands. Even if you're in a place like Nevada, it can take 2 years to get permits. It's just red tape in action. Canada and British Columbia is much more efficient.
Fantastic, Rob. Thank you so much, and thanks for talking so highly about your shareholders.
Oh man, yeah,
I am
and
one.
you
I
are
am a shareholder.
I know you're our most important one.
Really appreciate it. It really made me blush.
Okay.
Fantastic. Everybody else, we have a short coffee break, and we'll continue here at 10:45 with a really interesting session with a couple of royalty companies and to prospect generators. So thanks so much for joining us.